Okay, should have clicked the record button. Hi, folks. Welcome. Afternoon. We are here with another virtual career chat. Super excited for another one. These are happening continuously throughout the week, so feel free to tune in. For this career chat, we have Gabriel Seltzer here with us. He's coming from FormLabs with a very unique perspective. Really excited to hear more about Gabe and his work at FormLabs. Gabe, welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Hi. Yeah, I'm Gabe. I work at FormLabs. I'm from Boston. Lived here almost my whole life, although I took a quick detour off to the UK, which I can explain as part of this. Yeah, and I work in the world of 3D printing. Wasn't always there. So some cool stuff to show you and talk about that. And on the screen that I'm sharing is the 3D printer that my company makes. It's called the Form 3. Does some fancy stuff, which we could talk about. But a little bit about me. As I said, I grew up here, went to high school at Commonwealth High School in Copley, and went to college at Brandeis University out in Waltham. So I've been here all the time. Was able to get home nice and easy on the weekends when I needed to. And yeah, I kind of knew that I wanted to do some kind of technology stuff for a long time. I always liked computers, and my older brother always liked computers, so I liked to hang out with him, things like that. I also got into teaching a little bit, and started to pursue that through college. But I didn't really know what I wanted to do until I got a little bit further in freshman year. I actually joined the 3D printing club on campus. So if you don't know what 3D printing is, 3D printing is another way of making things, just like everything else in your house is made by some method. So usually if it's made out of plastic, you'd be looking at making a mold and then squirting liquid plastic into it. So you make lots and lots of those objects. So your toothbrush or something like that might be made that way. And 3D printing is another way of doing it. Basically, you end up using a robot and giving it instructions to make an object, and it does it. And there's tons of different ways of doing 3D printing. Some are really expensive, some are really cheap. Some you can play with at home. Some you need to be a business to use. And what's cool about 3D printing is that it lets you make things really quickly. So normally, if you said, "Hey, I have an idea for a brand new toothbrush. I want to make this. I'm going to make millions of dollars." If you gave that design to me and said, "Cool, I'll send it off to China to have them make it. It'll take like 6 months, and after that, we'll have a design. You can have 100 million of them, and you can sell them wherever you want." But that doesn't always work, right? Because sometimes you want to make stuff really quickly. For example, really obvious one is right now with the COVID-19 crisis. My company's been working on creating stuff for helping people cope with the COVID-19 crisis. And so we've worked on and validated a way of creating the test kits that you need to test to see if you have COVID-19. And so, obviously, if that had taken us 6 months to do, it would have been way too late to help anybody. I won't take any credit for this. My awesome coworkers got to do this in like 3 weeks, and were able to, come up with an idea, talk to hospitals, design it, print it, make it, do trials with it, print it again, yada yada yada. And now we're making tens of thousands of them a day, which is super cool because you couldn't do that before. So that's a little primer on how 3D printing works. I can get into more of the details if you guys are interested, but basically, it's a way of making stuff that you can do in a house and not a factory. And so I got into that by just going to a 3D printing club meeting right at the beginning of college. I was like, okay, this seems kind of interesting. And I got there, and they were showing all this cool stuff that they 3D printed. You might see some stuff behind me that's 3D printed. That is some of my favorites. I was like, wow, okay. I didn't realize you could do all this. I thought you could only make like cubes and things, or you had to be a programmer to do it. They said, no. All you got to do is you just go online, you download some designs that people share for free, and you pop them in the printer, and the parts will come out, and you'll be happy. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but I was hooked. And I never thought I'd do anything like this in my whole life. I started spending 6 hours, 4 hours in the weekends, a day at we call it our maker lab at Brandeis, which is this. I know all these people are all my good friends. This is the space. A lot of the clutter around here is my fault for making a mess. But I'd stay there in the Brandeis Library until 2 a.m, which is when they would kick all the students out, and I was always upset that I couldn't stay overnight. But yeah, I mean, I just kind of got into it. I'd start designing things. I'd come up with projects. I'd fix printers because they'd break. I'd talk to people and help them with stuff. And it became a huge part of what I did. I ended up doing internships over the summer at a couple of cool 3D printing companies, going to weird places, Cincinnati, Ohio, and then the trip to the UK that I mentioned. And it was amazing. It was, as I said, stuff that I never thought I'd do. And I can talk more about the specifics of all that. But anyway, after college, I also got a teaching degree and a teaching license, and also a computer science degree because I knew I liked programming and I knew I liked teaching. And we didn't have an engineering school, so there wasn't really a way for me to get into building machines or anything like that for 3D printing. So after college, I had done my last internship the summer of my junior year, between junior and senior year, with the company in the UK called E3D. They make parts for 3D printers. So this is a different type of 3D printer. You'll notice it looks very different from this one. They do different things. But I knew this company a lot. I had really enjoyed my time in the internship with them. And so I said, hey, do you guys want to hire me? They said, sure. Here's a thing. So I went and worked for them for a bit on a software project they were doing, then switched to one of their engineers. So I helped design some of these parts parts for machines, so like the metal bits, which was super cool. I learned a huge amount. And then eventually I said, this is awesome. I really enjoy it. Thank you guys for having me out here. I really miss Boston. And so November this year, I came back to Boston and joined one of my friends from college to work at FormLabs. So now I'm not doing anything quite as prestigious as engineering. Right now I'm just doing customer service, but I still get to do a lot of fun stuff. I get to talk to folks who say, hey, I have an idea for this prop for a TV show. How do I make it? Or, hey, I need to make this part for a machine, and I need to, again, not make it in 6 months and want to make it tonight so that I can show my boss tomorrow. How do I do it? Or I'm a dentist and I print models of people's teeth so that we can give them dentures and things like that. I need help. As well as, of course, my printer's broken, help me, please. And so, that's kind of my day-to-day at the moment. And it's been a wild ride because, as I said, I thought I was just going to go be a programmer and go do computer science stuff. And that didn't pan out. Not that that's bad, but this has been a really awesome journey. The other cool thing is that a lot of my coworkers have totally different backgrounds from me. So even though I did have a computer science degree, a lot of my coworkers are teachers or business students, things like that, who just are good communicators. And we're like, okay, 3D printing sounds like fun, and are learning or have learned to know more than me the ropes of how the printer works and things like that. And so it's been awesome to work with people from all sorts of different places who know lots of different things and learn stuff together with them, work with them, have a good time. Plus, as I said, getting to talk to customers who are doing all sorts of crazy cool things is always fun.
Yeah.
So that's long-winded 10-minute explanation of who I am. I can talk.
No, thank you so much for sharing. That's a great synopsis of what it's like to follow a STEM career, because again, this is something that's evolving. STEM as an industry is developing so fast.
Yeah.
And with 3D printing itself, there's so many different applications. So just to hear how you kind of came across 3D printing, this is exciting to hear that it wasn't necessarily a plan, walking out of high school, but was just an initial interest that evolved.
Yeah, and I mean, the technology to do what's on the screen right now, this type of printer, FormLabs has only been a company for, I think, like 7 years. And, we're still pretty small, but we're on the larger side of a startup at this point with 300, 500, 600 employees or something like that. And so this literally didn't exist when I went to high school. It just wasn't a thing. And so 3D printing in particular, but STEM in general, move super quickly, where stuff that didn't exist, entire fields that didn't exist suddenly open up because, well, in this case, because patents expired, but lots of other cool stuff where people are like, I have this cool idea. I need people to help me do it. And they kind of strike out. Now, I don't think I would particularly enjoy being on a brand new startup. I do enjoy being on a more established company where you have a product and we're selling things rather than like trying to work 24/7 to make something work before deadlines and things like that. But it's super cool to be like, you can look at the whole world of science, technology, anything like that and say, some of this is interesting, but I don't know exactly what. And by the time you're a little bit closer to actually looking for, like, okay, I need to find a job and do something, as all the time, maybe that'll crystallize into something that exists that you're like, okay, that's a really great intersection of, my skills. In this case, this has been a great intersection of, I know technical stuff. So when people start talking about software, okay, I kind of get what they're talking about. I have a good understanding of teaching and communication and things like that from learning to teach, and so I'm able to bring those together and like explain complicated 3D printing things to, as I said, dentists who are like, hey, I just need to make a model pop up on my build platform. I don't care about 3D geometry or anything fancy math wise, like just make it work. So all sorts of skills end up coming into play depending on where you find yourself, and if you know you're good at something and you're like, but I don't know how that relates to STEM, chances are good that there's a place that they do intersect. Just gotta do a little bit of research.
Yeah, thank you for repeating that. Like it's important to remember that you might not see a career, necessarily established for you right now, kids, if you are tuning in. However, like I said, STEM is developing so fast. There are jobs that'll start to be birthed out of these new innovations and developments. So stay hopeful and understand that you're very early in this process, and this is the exploratory phase. So what Gabriel is sharing with you is kind of important to remember when you're hitting a challenge or hitting a barrier in your STEM career pursuits. So Gabe, thank you for sharing that. I have a question, however. It seems as though, there are a lot of stepping stones that kind of helped you get to FormLabs, specifically internships and your travel to the UK. Could you talk a little bit about what that process is like, finding an internship, what it's like to graduate from high school and to start exploring, what it is that, kids kind of want to do? Is college the right step? Is, an internship or entry-level position the right step? What could you share a little bit about your experience with that?
Yeah, for sure. So I got really lucky with my internships. I either had already talked to the people who were going to be giving me the internships, so they kind of knew who I was. I wasn't just calling out of the blue. Or I had kind of nice background knowledge that made me seem like not a total random person. So out of high school, I actually took a gap year. I volunteered with City Year, if you guys are familiar, in City or Boston, which was not exactly teaching. People think it's pretty similar to Teach for America, but it's not exactly the same thing. You're not teaching, it's more of a tutoring role, full-time tutoring, which was amazing, and I learned a lot, and kind of wish I could do it over because I know a lot more now. But that was the first step of realizing, okay, I really like working with kids. I really like teaching. And a part of that is I really like helping people pursue something that they care about, right? I wouldn't be in the place where I am right now if I hadn't spent the 6 hours a day at the Maker Lab playing with 3D printers. So having that opportunity to, one, discover that I was interested, and then two, spend inordinate amounts of time learning and playing and tinkering is what got me here. And so I realized I liked all that. But then I went to college and I said, okay, I should maybe take some education classes and talk to my professors, because Brandeis is a little bit of a smaller school. And so I was able to talk to folks who were able to advise me and say, okay, these classes are going to be interesting to you. These classes you don't need. This is a track that might work. Here's a bunch of check boxes for classes. Start to check them off. Let me know how they go. And see what you think, which was super helpful because college is super complicated. And even if college isn't the right place, doing kind of what I did, which was branching out, finding people who are doing interesting things and then getting to know them. Definitely, excuse me, I think is like the best way to figure out what you want to do, what's out there. One more second. So, that lets you kind of network, but also explore what other people are doing, learn to work with people who are a bit different from you, things like that. So I got my first internship, which was actually in Cincinnati, Ohio, with a software company called Simplify 3D. I'm very proud of that print because there's lots of colors and it's hard to do that. I was very happy with that one. But they made some software that we used in the makerspace, and I knew they were a small company. We had gotten in touch with them once before because we had asked if they could give us a free license to their software. And they said yes, which was really, really nice of them. And after that, as a kind of thank you to them, I had written them a fairly long email saying, hey, I love your software. It's really great for this, that, and the other. I have a bunch of suggestions. Here's a bunch of things that you might find useful. You've probably heard before, but whatever. And, they were really nice. And they said, thanks for the suggestions. And by the time it started to started to be middle of the school year, winter, a little bit before April, my parents were like, so what are you going to do this summer? And I said, I don't know. I'm just used to doing school so much. I said, how about you get an internship? I said, oh, okay, Mom. Okay, Dad. And I started thinking about, all right, best case scenario, what would I want to do? If I could do anything this summer, what would I want to do? And I said, well, Simplify 3D, they seem pretty cool. That'd be super cool. I was studying programming at the time. I was like, I don't know what in the world I could possibly do for them, but it would be really cool. And so I said, okay, so maybe I could reach out to them. And I gave it some thought. And I was also super lucky that I have cousins in Cincinnati who are willing to let me stay there. So I was like, all right, so this is kind of a Hail Mary, but you don't ask if you don't know if you don't ask. I mean, worst case scenario when I send them an email is that they say, nope, sorry, not interested. You can't work for us. Bye-bye. Right? It's the same as that is not asking. So after sitting and thinking about it for a while, I decided to write them an email. And actually, in this case, what I did was I said, hey, I'm Gabe. I sent you an email a long time ago. You probably don't remember me. I love your software. I really want to work for you. And in this case, I had in my opinion, fairly bright idea, which was I think you guys could use a new piece of documentation. So this is a troubleshooting guide that says, okay, I tried to 3D print something. It didn't come out so good. Why didn't it come out so good? And it helps you try and figure that out because the type of 3D printing that Simplify 3D does is it's very easy to get mistakes. So I said, I think you guys need this. Nobody's done it. If you do it, I feel like everybody would use it and they'll really like you. And so I included that in the email. I said, like a proposition, like, hey, I think I can do this for you. What do you think? And I think that helped a lot because otherwise they would have been like, this kid from Massachusetts, how's he even going to get to Cincinnati, let alone do anything useful for us? And I think they liked the idea. And they said, cool, let's do it. And I said, oh, goodness. All right, now I need to get in touch with my cousins in Cincinnati and make sure that I could stay with them or what. And I need to drive to work. And it was a whole to-do. But it ended up being great. I mean, I got to learn a lot. It was really fun to be there. The project that I worked on, I'll share the screen here, is this Simplify 3D troubleshooting guide. I'm super proud of it. I didn't do everything. I did a lot of the writing and the photos. But what's so cool about this to me is that when I meet folks who do 3D printing and who have used this type of 3D printer, they're always like, oh, you made that guide? I'm like, yeah, I mean, I guess I made that guide. They're like, dude, I use that guide all the time, which was the whole point. Is I really wanted to make a guide for the community to use, so I was super happy with this. So, again, if you get a project and you think you could pitch it to somebody, it's awesome. So that's where I got there, and then I felt like, okay, I'm into the 3D printing world now. Like, this is what I do. I'm a pro. Next summer, I said, all right, big picture, what would I do if I could do anything? I said, well, Autodesk, who make lots of 3D design software, stuff that you'd use if you wanted to design a surfboard or if you wanted to design like anything. anything from surfboards to bridges. You say, I would love to work for them. And they happen to have an office in Waltham. So I was like, this is going to be great. I'm going to live on campus and I'll go to Waltham and I'll take classes over the summer. Like, it'll be perfect. And so I wrote, I found they're a huge company, and I wrote them you don't write to them. They're a big company, so you go on their website that they have a list of all their opportunities, and you put in your resume and whatever. And I was like hyped. I was like, this is gonna be great. And I found a position that sounded awesome. It was the same kind of like making documentation thing. I said, great. And then they got back to me and they're like, no, we don't think you're good for this. And that was not fun. Not fun to have that happen, but not 100% a surprise. The position I was applying for was kind of required you to be like out of college. So I was hoping that they might be able to tweak it for me, but it obviously didn't happen. So that was disappointing, but I was able, again, through kind of my connections with the Maker Lab, which is the place I've been working on campus with, where the club existed. They said, hey, how about you just stick with us over the summer? You can take a couple of classes, work for us, keep getting your hands dirty. I said, great. So that was fun. And then kind of the biggest Hail Mary one in terms of internships, I know I'm going long on the answer to this question, but the last one was the one in the UK. So I knew of E3D, this company in the UK. They're not a big company, like 50 people. They put out goofy YouTube videos of, their directors who are funny. And I said, oh, they sound great. I had used their documentation website before too. And I said, your documentation needs work also. So I said, all right, you know what? Maybe I'll chat with them. And again, this was at the prompting of my parents, like, hey, you got to find something to do this summer. I was like, oh, I don't know. And then one day at close to midnight, I was like, you know what? Fine. I'll send them an email. So I sent them an email. I said, hey, I love your stuff. You guys are great. Do you ever do internships? Do you ever hire anyone from the United States? Because I don't even know what that looks like, but I would love to work for you. And they said, cool, let's do an interview. We did an interview. They said, we think you're cool. We have no idea how to hire you because we've never hired someone from the United States before. So then we had to figure all that out. Long story short, because none of that's particularly interesting, I did go there for the summer. It was awesome. I learned a huge amount because they are engineers and I hadn't worked with engineers before. So I learned a huge amount, had a great time. I was very tempted to stay and not finish school because they offered me to stay on. And my parents were like, no, you need to finish your senior year of college. And I was like, okay. So I did that. And then I went to go back to work for them after finishing school, which was awesome. So anyway, that's a very long answer to that question. But the kind of to distill it down to its pieces, number one, you got to ask people if you want to work for them. Number two, it's great if you have an idea of something you could do for them rather than just being like, hey, give me a job. And I would say number three is not the same as number one. You got to ask, you got to try for things that you want. And worst case scenario, people say no. So, and also, I got super lucky. I got super lucky in that I asked people who are willing. I had the means to just go to crazy places I never thought I'd go. And I had the background that kind of made me an interesting candidate. So if you feel like, this is, I'd never want to go to Cincinnati or the UK in my life, that's totally fine. There's so much cool stuff in Boston. And you could do all those things without, being a superstar. I'm by no means a superstar. You just kind of got to show people that you're like a normal human being and can do your job. So.
Definitely a lot of takeaways there, advocating for yourself, using your voice, and understanding that you might be pushing for a job or an occupation that doesn't exist right now. And so, definitely, highlighting your skills and communicating that and being an advocate for yourself. That's pretty much what I got from what you shared with us. So thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So we are nearing the end of our session here, Gabe. And I just wanted to kind of close out with some advice for our students. So students who might tune into these STEM chats can come from, all different walks of life. They might either fall in two categories or, you know, three or four, but I know predominantly we have students who are, one, very eager, love STEM, and are just ready for the next step. You know, what kind of advice would you give those students? And then on the flip side, we have another group of students that might, you know, love STEM, be interested, but then can be a little bit overwhelmed and are hesitant to pursue a STEM career because they feel as though it's daunting or they don't have enough skills. So what kind of advice would you give those two groups of students?
Yeah. I would say, so my big one is follow that curiosity. If you're like, you know, in my case, 3D printing is interesting, I want to read more about it. Or if you're like, I want to know more about robots, or I want to know more about programming or machine learning, or goodness knows, there's 100 million things out there. Number one is, I would say, stick to that. Explore it until you get bored. Then stop exploring it. Don't force yourself to keep going. Find something else you're interested in and keep doing it. I have, you know, to be kind of cliche, that the road to success is paved with dead projects that never finished. And so, you know, just exploring, learning, getting little bits and pieces, you never know what's going to help you. You never know what's going to pique your interest. In terms of like right now, what can you do? There are huge numbers of cool tools that you can start using to get into actually making things. And something I didn't mention before, but I was never very good at art or anything like that. So I never had this visceral, physical, tangible experience of creating something, which is one of the biggest things I loved about 3D printing. Was like I had an idea and I turned it into a physical object in a couple of hours. I was like, that didn't exist before. That came from me. That felt really cool. So if you're looking for something like that, or even not, there's a lot of really great tools to help you, especially as you know, as kids. Who people have created tools that work for you, that are free, that are online, tutorials, things like that. So just don't be afraid to do your research, do your reading. A couple of quick plugs. If you're interested in making 3D models, you know, designing stuff, either for creating, for manufacturing, for, you know, making toothbrushes, or for visual effects, CGI, you know, TV show stuff, any of those things, you can get started with some really cool tools. One that I like a lot is called Autodesk's Tinkercad. It's an ultra easy way of starting to design things, and it leads really naturally into fancier 3D design softwares, like this case is Onshape. Both of those are free, by the way. This is like the most complicated thing I ever made, so if it looks scary, don't be too afraid of it. But you can make that jump from one type of design software to another. So if you want to make things, these are great ways to get started. If you want to learn to code, you know, do stuff with programming, I highly recommend, I didn't open it up here, but Scratch is a great way to get started learning the concepts of programming, how computers work, what tools you need to explain things to a computer, basically, you know, that type of thing. Scratch is an awesome way to get started. And again, there's lots of tools, tutorials, people who can help you with this. And if you're like, you know what, I've done Scratch and I'm over it, making the jump from Scratch to a more, I guess, quote unquote, real programming language, and that one that you actually have to type things rather than dragging programmable blocks, is super easy. And so that making the jump from Scratch to, say, Python, Ruby, or any of those is easy. Again, endless numbers of tutorials online to get you started. You know, if you're interested in engineering, things like that, I have a little bit less guidance because I'm still learning that stuff myself. But I know that there are free online tutorials or just recordings of college classes, which, if you're not interested in, will sound awful and jargony and boring. And if you are interested, will sound like gold mines of things that you can pause the video, go Google, and be like, oh, this is so cool. Like somebody actually figured out how, you know, how metals expand when they get hot. Like that blows my mind, and I want to learn more about that. You know, so they're gold mines. Intro classes are gold mines for cool stuff that you can go Google later if it piques your interest. Those are kind of my general recommendations.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And you even gave us some resources. So kids, if you see that these can be, you know, your first stepping stones into STEM, or your first kind of exploratory approach to STEM, definitely take Gabe's advice. You see that, you know, STEM can be kind of ambiguous in that, you know, you don't know what to expect. So you just try to, you know, learn as much as you can, apply your skills as often as you can, and reach out to people, be an advocate, create a community to help, you know, establish where it is that you want to see yourself, you know, in the future. So Gabe, thank you so much for sharing your perspective, and thank you for giving us all these resources.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if you guys still do, you know, ongoing stuff, but I'm super happy to chat with anyone who's interested. I'm sure it's something you can facilitate, or I can give my email address. I don't know.
Absolutely. So folks, if you are interested in connecting with Gabe, you do have my contact information. Go ahead and send me an email. Go ahead and loop everyone up with Gabe, just so that folks can stay connected and we can further this partnership. But this is the end of our career chat. So thank you again, Gabe, for your time and for
Thank you guys for having me.
Of course, of course. These STEM chats are happening throughout the week, folks. So continue to tune in when you can. These are super insightful and valuable. So please share the word with your colleagues, friends, and coworkers. Gabe, thank you again for your time, and have a great rest of the afternoon.
Thanks. Yeah.
All right. Bye now.